Welcome to the Story a Day podcast. This is Julie Duffy, encouraging you to be a writer today, not someday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is Julie Duffy from Story a Day, and I have a guest with me today. I'm talking today to Raphael Schaad, who is a new friend of mine who is training innovative entrepreneurs on the possibilities and options that are available to use voice assistants. So welcome, Raphael.
Hey, Julie. Nice to be here with you.
So why don't we start with some definitions? Like, what are you talking about when you say voice assistants?
It's the opposite of it is pretty easily explained. The opposite is typing and swiping. So every time you're talking to a computational device, maybe your phone, maybe it's your PC, maybe it's your smart speaker, maybe it's your car, maybe your hearables, headphones, whatever. All the time you're talking with a computational device, you're using a voice assistant, if you know it or not.
Excellent. So that's much broader. I was thinking about the speakers only, but that's actually much broader. So one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is that we met at a conference and we were talking about the possibilities and the wider world of storytelling that exists for writers now. And one of the things that writers always complain about is that it's hard to find an audience. It was when I started in this gig 25 years ago, people were talking about it's hard to get a publisher to look at your manuscript. And then we invented ebooks. And so the people who were in on the ground floor of that did pretty well. And now everyone's complaining that it's hard to find an audience in ebooks because so many people are doing it, blah, blah, blah. So we're always complaining about not being able to find an audience, but we're reluctant to jump on new trends because we don't really understand them. So I wanted to talk to you today about what you see as possibilities and options out there for people who are comfortable with story and want to find their audience. So what can voice assistants do for us?
Yeah, you already talked a little about it. If you already have stories or you like to write stories, then voice assistants bring a completely new feature into it. So you could let the listener decide how the story should end or be continued. So interactive storytelling, it's more, you write maybe the same amount of pages, maybe 1,000, but there can be different ways how the story is continuing. So I can imagine that authors are not the people who are the most innovative thinking ones, but as you said, to be found, to be discovered under, I don't know how many fiction books are out there in the world, but there are pretty sure just a tiny, tiny fraction of that in, for example, the Alexa skill store of interactive stories. So it's as easy as get it as your own ebook published, but there are just a few authors, and it is actually one of the most popular kind of skill. What is a skill? Just for everyone who is not completely into this voice assistant world, on your smartphone, you have a lot of apps. And the same can be the case with voice assistants. So you have voice apps. You can develop your own, or you have an agency, let it develop for you, depending on your money budget. And these apps, you have complete control over it, and you could write your interactive story in these voice apps. That's the possibility you have.
And that's something that, a lot of us are writing very linear stories now, because that's sort of what we're more familiar with. It's what we're trained for. It's what publishers are buying. But there are so many, and I think a lot of people in the fantasy world are more comfortable with this idea because they may have played Dungeons and Dragons, which is a native branching story. If you've ever been the person running a Dungeons and Dragons game, you would be very familiar with writing a branching story where you get to a point and it depends on what your party does. Or if you've ever played a video game that's story-based, the people who put that together had to write these kinds of stories because every choice you make takes you down a different path. And I've recently discovered there are sort of software programs or websites you can go to, which are almost like mind mapping software, but it's specifically designed for branching narrative stories. So if the idea is intimidating about thinking about, well, I would get lost and I wouldn't know how to write it, there are tools out there to help us do that. Like the hardest part of writing a story is not the sort of technical part of it, is the making people care about our characters part of it. And we're already trained in that. So this is a really interesting and sort of, I think it's a really exciting possibility.
Definitely.
But there were other things. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, it's about the creativity. The technical part, I can see the point that people are scared about the technical stuff and how to get started and everything else. But it's, if you really, if you can build a website like Wix.com or anything like that, then you have more than sufficient knowledge to write your fictional interactive story as an own voice app as well. So the hardest thing is maybe to get into this mindset of how would be an interactive story, or how has it to be written, that you not just have pretty boring decisions in there, for example, or at the end it's just one end, but you have like 5 different steps and you could have them in each order, but it wouldn't make really a difference to the end. That maybe you have maybe 5 characters, and in one ending the first is dying, the second maybe the third or whatever, and there's one ending everyone is dead. I don't know. So you have multiple possibilities where it should actually make a difference what the listeners are or how they engage with your story.
Yeah, because I know from video games when they give you the illusion of choice, but you quickly realize that you're actually being shepherded down the same path, it's pretty disappointing.
Really, yeah. Then then your listener thinks you think they are dumb or whatever. Yeah.
And we do not want that. We want to make people trust us, and we want to make people trust they're in good hands when we're in everything, I think, not just storytelling, but business too. And that's one of the things that you are thinking about. I mean, currently you have a course where you teach people how to do a podcast skill, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you're telling me it's easy, and somebody who could put together a Wix website could do that.
Exactly. Nothing more fancy. Yeah.
Okay. Because I find that, I mean, I'm pretty technical, but I was intimidated when we started talking about this. So if you can show me how to do it, then that's much more interesting. Let me concentrate on the parts that I do well.
Shall I
show me how to do the rest?
Shall I show it to you, Julie?
You can.
I mean, maybe it's interesting for your listeners as well. We could ask if there's a certain interest and to go down that path
Absolutely.
Together.
So if you're listening to this and you would be interested in knowing more about how to get your audio content onto a voice assistant system with a skill, like the Alexa skill, then send me an email, julie@storyaday.org, or come to the blog and leave, I'll put a link in the show notes, and leave us a comment and let us know, you want to see this, and we'll come back and do a little tutorial or something, a little taster of what Raphael can teach you. So, but there's not just these interactive stories that we could get into with this. There's all kinds of possibilities that you saw for writers with voice assistants, and some pitfalls as well. So why don't you take us through some of those?
Yes. Everyone is talking about voice commerce. So like the easiest thing to order stuff in the future will be just say it, and there are computational devices in your home, on your head, maybe in your hand, or you're driving one. which will respond to it. And Amazon Alexa as a channel of buying stuff from Amazon, I think, it's pretty well known. It's nothing new. But there are actually studies that show how much money authors are losing or not gaining, actually, because their book title cannot be, it's not pronounceable. Correct me if my English is not right, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I can give you an example of that, because my first website that I put up for business when I was doing business writing, I called it jdwrite.com, and that was my email, and I very quickly realized there are many different ways that you can spell write. And I thought it would be obvious because it was writing and people would be seeing it in print, but that was back in 2000. So now, if I say JD Write out loud, I mean, I've stopped using that email address because people don't know how to spell it, and it's WRITE, and I have to spell it out. And then with my accent, because I live in America, if I say JD, people hear GD. So it's just a nightmare. So you do thinking about how if you're using a pseudonym as an author, thinking about, not only do we have to now think about how it looks on one of those tiny little tiles in the Amazon store, but thinking about how your name and your book title sound is interesting. But it's fascinating that they've actually done a study on that.
Yeah. I can maybe we can put the link in the show notes.
We scare everyone.
Yeah, but better early than late. And of course there are other things as an author. Obviously, having audio content or your book as an audiobook is getting even more important when you access content via voice, because it does not have to be just voice back or audio back. It can be obviously also video if you're using a channel which has screen. But definitely there's an audio component, and the people who want to interact with voice with a computational device, they're not that keen on reading something on these screens. So it's way more convenient for your readers to actually listen instead of reading something on the screen. But one thing you said before with interactive storytelling, if you already have audio content, it actually does not have to be. It would be better if you have everything spoken out loud and you can use sounds with it. That's it makes it way more interesting to have an audio file, actually. But to get a start, and if you're not really, you don't want to buy a fancy microphone or whatever, and you want to test it first out, you can start actually with different voices. It does not have to be the native Alexa voice. There are other voices you can use as well. You can also use a male voice, multiple ones actually. And you can use one which fits your story well. And then you also have the possibility to fine tune the sound of the voice. So if you just have text to speech, you can also say strong. So it would be like the similar thing than bold in written words, something like that. Or you can include breaks. You can, say something more soft or quieter. Actually, you have a lot of possibilities there if you don't have audio content. But of course, it would be even better if you have it.
Wow, I had no idea that you could actually get it to read, because I've heard some of those stories that with the Alexa voice reading. That's really interesting. I had no idea you could just do that and then tell it to emphasize things or pause or.
Right. I actually think that the Alexa voice is the most boring one, but maybe just because it's the most frequent used. So you are too much used to it, actually.
Yeah, like you don't want your story read by the same person that tells you what the weather is going to be.
Right, yeah. But when we now talk about Alexa it all is the same with the Google Assistant. So if you ask, okay, Google, you can have interactive stories there as well. The same with Samsung Bixby. But Alexa is the most known word for these voice assistants, you could say.
I presume Siri on the Apple devices as well.
Siri as well, but Siri does not work in the way we need to have it for our interactive stories, actually. Okay. It's just a way to use your smartphone apps.
Okay.
Yeah, I could go deeper into that. It's maybe not for your audience, but Siri is not a complete voice assistant from the perspective that you can influence what it is. Yeah, what Siri answers. You don't have applications just for Siri. There are rumors that there will be a Siri OS after they have now the iPad OS as well. But the rumors are around, like I'm in the scene since 2 years or so, and there was no Siri OS since then. So I don't know if it will be there one day. But what I've said is actually not valid for Siri.
Okay, that's good to know. And I, like, the geek in me wants to get into this and say, like, so would it be differently? Like, what are the differences between, if I did one for Alexa, I would have to do a whole other one for Google. But I think I'm going a little too deep there, so we'll stick with the storytelling part of it. So, do you think that people are listening to them?
What I can say is that from the star reviews, the amount of stars and the rating actually. These are one of the most popular kind of skills, actually.
I don't want to say you're making it sound easy, but you're making it sound very possible. And I think that's quite exciting. So thank you for that. And I presume you will be able to show us how to do this if it seems like enough people are interested.
Yeah, would be a pleasure for me.
So that's another thing that I want people to come to the blog and let us know. Are you interested in this? Are you interested in learning about this? Are you interested in having a course that you could point your favorite geek at to help you actually implement this? So come over to the blog and let us know what you think. Like, are you excited about the stories? Have you been in a D&D group where you are comfortable with storytelling? Do you have no idea what we're talking about? In which case you should probably go to your smart speaker and say, tell me a story, and then you'll find out what we're talking about.
Awesome.
So thank you very much for introducing us to all of this, Raphael, and we will look forward to seeing what the listeners have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week. And of course, keep writing.